Have you ever had a complicated relationship with a place? You know, a place that made you who you are, but also really hurt you. Today, we're diving into that deep and honestly, often painful connection between our identity and the places we come from. We're talking about the systems and the streets that can feel like both home and a battlefield.
Wow. I mean, that's a statement that just stops you in your tracks, right? It's like walking through a very, very big cemetery. This isn't just someone criticizing a city. This is someone describing a deep, personal trauma. This whole idea of Stockholm Syndrome, it sets the stage for a really powerful and I think necessary conversation.
All right, so to really get into this, we're going to break it down into 5 key ideas. We'll start with this concept of 2 different Chicagos. Then we'll get into the psychology of what's called an attachment to survival. From there, we'll look at the rapper's contradiction, expose the bait and switch at the heart of it all, and finally, we'll land on why responsibility has to come before loyalty.
Okay, so first up, 2 different Chicagos. This really gets to the core of the whole thing. How can 2 people look at the exact same place and have completely opposite feelings about it? Well, the answer is all in the difference between a person's lived experience and their identity.
And here it is. This is the fundamental disconnect. For one person, their experience of the city is literal. It was a battlefield. It is a graveyard for their friends. But for someone else, Chicago is just an idea, a symbol, a badge of honor, maybe even a fantasy they see in movies. These 2 groups aren't just disagreeing, they're not even talking about the same place.
And this is so important. For the person who actually lived through all that loss, what they feel isn't just hate. It's a trauma response. It's biological. Their nervous system has literally marked that place as dangerous. So wanting to get away from it isn't an insult to the city. It's a profound act of self-preservation.
So that brings us to the other side of the coin, attachment to survival. Okay, so if a place is so harmful, why would anyone defend it? Why do people get so angry when someone else points out the painful truth?
Well, there's this key psychological pattern called an attachment to survival. It's what happens when the pride you take in surviving something awful gets all tangled up with the thing that caused the suffering in the first place. Your identity gets wrapped up in being a survivor of that specific pain.
And in the real world, this looks like loving a neighborhood that keeps hurting you. It looks like defending a system that destroys people you know. It's romanticizing the struggle. It becomes this weird loyalty to pain, not because the pain is good, but because it's familiar and because it's part of your story.
Which brings us right back to the big question, doesn't it? If you know deep down that it's destructive, why defend it so fiercely? Because honestly, the alternative is terrifying. Admitting the truth means you actually have to stop and grieve all that loss. It might mean you have to let go of a huge piece of your identity. It means facing survivor's guilt. And maybe the worst part, you have to accept that all that suffering wasn't for some noble reason. It was just suffering. So yeah, it's a lot easier to just defend the city.
Okay, next up, let's look at what's called the rapper's contradiction. This is a perfect example of how this exact same dynamic plays out, not just with a physical place like Chicago, but with a whole culture, a system like the streets. You see, this tension is everywhere. We see this debate play out all the time with rappers and other public figures who came from really tough environments. The question is, how do you honor where you came from without glorifying the parts that destroy people?
And the thing is, both of these statements can be true at the same time. The streets made me is a statement about your origin. It's acknowledging, yeah, all that pressure and trauma, it shaped me. But F the streets, that's a statement of growth. It's saying now that I'm out and I see the full cost, I reject that system. People confuse where you came from with where your loyalty has to be.
And this right here, this is the logical hammer that just makes it all so clear. I mean, think about it. We all recognize that things like prison or abuse or poverty shape people, right? But we would never, ever argue that those things deserve our praise or our loyalty. So why would a destructive street culture be any different?
This brings us to the bait and switch. This is really the core deception, the trick that keeps these harmful systems going, generation after generation.
So here's the bait. The streets promise all the things a young person craves, especially if they feel powerless. They promise respect, money, power, a sense of belonging, brotherhood. I mean, it is an incredibly tempting package. And then, here's the switch. The reality is the total opposite of the promise. What actually gets delivered is a cycle of early death, prison, unending trauma, and broken families. It's not a pathway to success, it's a trap.
So how do you spot this contradiction in the wild? There's a really simple way. It's called the kids test. If someone is out there telling the world, the streets made me, but then they go home and tell their own kids, stay away from the streets, don't do what I did. Well, they're sending two very different messages. One is the truth they use to protect their own family. The other is a myth they use to protect their image. That isn't honesty. That's just branding. And all of this leads us to our final and honestly our most important idea: choosing responsibility over loyalty. This is about making a conscious shift away from defending the past and toward protecting the future.
This is just such a powerful release from guilt. It's giving permission to anyone who's ever been called disloyal for just speaking their truth. You are not obligated to love a place or a system or a culture that has cost you and the people you love everything. And this, right here, is what maturity and a real growth actually look like. It's not about endlessly defending the thing that you barely survived. It's about using your experience to warn other people, to tell them, hey, don't touch that fire. It burned me. That's the real work.
I want to say that again. Stop confusing survival with success. Stop selling poison as a pathway. This isn't a message of hate. It's a call for clarity and for responsibility. It's about refusing to sell a toxic system as if it's some kind of legitimate path forward.
And this final metaphor, it just captures the two paths so perfectly. Some people will always stay attached to the fire because they remember that it gave them a little bit of warmth once, even while it was scarring them. And others realize they have been burned way too many times, and the only sane choice is to walk away.
Both reactions are real. They're both human. But as we've talked about here, only one of those paths really leads to healing and breaks the cycle for the next generation. So the final question isn't which path is easier, it's